One of the lingering questions following the Queen's passing is what happens now? There is a long and detailed succession plan which triggers following the death of a reigning monarch. For a closer look at the procedure and what we can expect over the next few days, let's go live to constitutional law expert Professor Anne Twomey, who's with the University of Sydney. Professor Twomey, thank you for your time. Give us a sense of the process here, the mechanics around how this unfolds over coming days.
Okay, well, the first thing we need to understand is that Charles has already become King of Australia, and that happened instantly upon the death of the Queen. So our rules of succession for the Crown of Australia are exactly the same as the British rules of succession. So there's no gap, there's no need for a proclamation or anything to make that happen. So what happens next is really more ceremonial and symbolic in nature. So there will be a proclamation that the Governor-General reads. There will be, at some stage, a ceremonial sitting in Parliament. There'll be a national memorial service. There will be gun salutes. There will be flags at half-mast. There will be church services and condolences books and just ways for people in the community to express their appreciation for the Queen.
Yeah, indeed. So there's a gun salute this evening, actually, in Canberra, as we've mentioned throughout the afternoon, and then the proclamation by the Governor-General over the weekend. The Executive Council of the government also meets, but this is it's all ceremonial, Anne Twomey.
It is. It doesn't actually affect the fact that Charles already has become king and will continue to be king. You don't have to wait till you're crowned. You don't have to wait for a proclamation or even the Accession Council. So the actual transition happened when none of us were aware, at the very point when the Queen died. So everything from now on is really symbolic in nature.
And in terms of the way this has unfolded, 70 years is an incredible reign, the longest in British history, the longest wait as well for an heir apparent, Anne Twomey, with King Charles III now taking the throne.
It is certainly a very long time. And, you know, if you think about it in terms of bookends, the relationship that Australia has with the monarchy has changed enormously. When Queen Elizabeth came to the throne, we still had Privy Council appeals, for example. So our highest court was in Britain, not in Australia. We still had the Queen appointing state governors on the advice of British ministers rather than Australian ministers. We still had the Queen able to refuse assent to bills from Australia or to disallow laws of the states, for example. And a lot of that changed in 1986 when we had the Australia Act. So we cut off a lot of that colonial relationship with the United Kingdom, and we just kept the Queen and the role of the monarch. So during her lifetime, her relationship with Australia has changed significantly.
And over the next few days, as the Prime Minister and Governor-General head to London this week, there'll be other dignitaries from around the Commonwealth nations and beyond that will also be there for the funeral of Her Majesty. And while King Charles III is grieving the loss of his mother, he has to engage with a lot of immediate diplomacy, doesn't he, in terms of the authority of the Crown. Ensuring that continuity continues is a pretty important part, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's a hard task for anyone who's lost a parent, but traditionally this is what's happened. And he has been preparing for it for a long time. So there are lots of plans in place for him, for example, to travel to all the various parts of the United Kingdom to show himself and be seen as the king. So the king for Wales, the king for Northern Ireland, the king for Scotland, as well as the United Kingdom. So all of those plans have been in place for a long time, and now is the time for implementing them. And not only, of course, is he king for the United Kingdom, but he is king of 15 different realms, and they include Australia and New Zealand and Canada and many countries in the South Pacific and in the Caribbean. So he's going to also want, I presume, to be seen as king in those countries as well.
It hasn't always been a smooth relationship between the Parliament and the monarch in the United Kingdom, that's for sure. But one of his first requirements as well will be the King's speech to the Parliament.
That's right, but he's already been doing that. So he has actually filled in for the Queen to be able to to give that speech to Parliament. So he'll be used to that. He's familiar with what's been happening. He's been gradually brought in to fulfil a lot of these functions on behalf of the Queen, but now he'll be doing it on his own behalf. And it'll be quite interesting to see if there's any kind of shift in the way he does things, whether he takes a more proactive, more political, more outspoken approach than the Queen. We don't know, but he is, of course, a different individual, and it might well be that we see the way the monarchy is expressing itself is changed because we do have a new king.
And in terms of the Australian outlook as well, it's obviously very too early, you would imagine, to be talking about the debate around a republic, although the Greens leader has made an intervention on that front already. But there's no doubt a momentous occasion like the loss of Her Majesty. It does bring to bear that sort of discussion about our own system. And I interviewed John Howard earlier today, who was saying that it's a reminder of the strength, the continuity from one monarch to the next, the strength of the constitutional monarchy in his view.
Yes, it could be looked at in two different ways. So on the one hand, we can look at it in terms of Queen Elizabeth and her steadfast role as a head of state for Australia over such a long period of time and what she has contributed to the country. And it may well be in the years that follow that sense of nostalgia for the past and the raised profile of the monarchy may in fact boost their standing. On the other hand, people might be confronted by the fact that our head of state can change in the blink of an eye without us actually doing anything about it. And they might ask themselves, well, did we ever get to make an active choice about whether or not we have this person as our head of state? So both sides, I think, have arguments on their own side as to whether or not this should point more towards the strengths of the monarchy or a need to change to a republic. But the one thing I think we should remember is that the Albanese government, although it supports the move to a republic, has actually said that that's a second-order issue, an issue for its second term in government, if it has one, and that its first priority is to look at Indigenous constitutional recognition. So I don't think anyone's going to be rushing off to implement a republic right now. If it does happen at all, it won't be a matter that we closely consider until at least a second term of this government, if there is one. So I think at the moment the constitutional focus is still going to be back on Indigenous constitutional recognition.
Professor Anne Twomey, as always, appreciate your time and your insights. Professor Anne Twomey from the University of Sydney. Thanks.